growing up Bootheel. Today, we're lifting the voices and stories of people who grew up right here in Southeast Missouri, people who carried the lessons of this place into the world and found ways to make a difference. In just 5 minutes each, we have 8 neighbors, friends, and hometown heroes who will share a piece of their journey, the lessons they learned, what this place taught them, how they overcame, and the successes they've had. So settle in, listen close, and let these Bootheel stories remind us that our roots can take us farther than we ever imagined.
Hi, my name is Mamie Walton, Mamie Lipsey Walton. I grew up in Caruthersville on 14th Street. Our first home was a sad home because we had was cold. We had water when it rained. Water would drip in the all over, and we had buckets all over to catch the water. We had outdoor toilet, but my 2 older brothers went into the service, and so they were able to send my mom money, and so she was able to get a house that had a real roof. And we had indoor plumbing. So life was a lot better, but we were still very poor. My mom had had 5 strokes, and she was no longer able to work. Before that, she could only go, I think, to the 6th grade. And we didn't have a high school in Caruthersville at that time. So she had to get a job where she could, which was cleaning houses for white people and doing their laundry. And that was how she made spending money. She was also on welfare. And so we had some income, but not much. I had a younger brother, Joseph Stewart, who was in the grade behind me. And he and I learned so much from our mom. She was limited in her physical strength, but she was such a wise lady. She took us to church every Sunday. She taught us to love and respect everybody. And even though we were poor, we always had food because she had a garden in the backyard. She raised chickens. So we never really went hungry, but we didn't have any money either. But she was she had such a good heart. We used to have a gentleman, we called him Thin Gravy. Now, I don't know if Thin Gravy was homeless or what, but we would be in the kitchen eating, and Thin Gravy would be in the back of our house going through the trash looking for food. And she would open the door and she'd say, "Thin Gravy, come out of that trash can and come over here and get you a plate." And so she would take a sausage off of Joe's plate, an egg off of my plate, and we're saying, "Mama." And she said, "Shut up. You got enough food. You aren't hungry. You don't know what it's like to be hungry. So be quiet." And so we'd be quiet. But we learned from her how to treat other people, no matter how much we thought we didn't have, we had more than some had. And so we learned to focus on what we did have, to thank God for the blessings that we did have. We had a roof over our head. We had a family that loved each other and supported each other. We had schools that teachers loved us. And I say that because they would go out of their way to make sure that we were successful. If it meant by giving Johnny a sandwich, or if it meant whatever they needed to do to help us to succeed, they would do that. And our teachers were so supportive that if somebody was bullying you, or doing something to you, you could go to them and they would resolve the problem. And they did that even if it was their own child in school with you. That's how much they took care of us. And that was a blessing. That taught us how to respect others and how to treat people. And I've never forgotten that. My mom died when she was young. She was in her 50s, and I was 16. And when she died, that's when I decided I wanted to be a registered nurse because I couldn't help her. So when I did leave Caruthersville to go live with my older brother, I was able to graduate with honors and to get into nursing school. And I had the privilege of working at home with Phillips with all Black doctors. And that was really a wonderful experience. Thank you.
My name is Johnny Hood. I am actually pastor of the St. James Word of Faith Word Outreach Center of Hayti, Missouri, and via Caruthersville. I'm also blessed to be a councilman in Ward 1 right here in Caruthersville, holding the position also of Mayor Pro Tem. And I've got 3 or 4 little things that I wrote down that I wanted to share that I felt like being raised up in the Bootheel area. First of all, I want to talk about my hometown, the area that I grew up in, the hometown. I lived out in the country and not very far on Highway 84 going toward Hayti. And I always felt like I was an outsider to a certain degree. But the blessing was my grandparents lived in the city of Caruthersville on the northwest side. We lived on 4th and Ferguson Street, 408 Ferguson in the rear. And I happened to live right across the street from what then was the only public swimming pool in Caruthersville. However, because of segregation and the laws at that time, there was never a time when me or my brothers or sisters could swim in that pool. I always remember that because in line with where I've gone in my life, and I put that down, being a person in the hometown, I was exposed to diversity at a very young age. All of the kids in the neighborhood that I played with were white kids. And the people that I went to church with were all Black kids. I was blessed to go to Washington School from 1st grade until 8th grade. But the reason I bring the diversity in is that later on, I had no idea where this was taking me to. When we began to integrate and have football and basketball teams where we played together, I knew most of the white kids on the team. I was the only Black kid on the freshman basketball team or football team first, because in '67, most of my classmates were still at Washington School, and I ended up being at Caruthersville High in 1967, being the only African American on that freshman football team. But it exposed me to learning how to get along with all people. And I didn't realize where it was taking me. Let me say this just a little bit about Washington School was the place that groomed me for being who I am today and what I'm doing today. Had no idea at a young age that I would become a pastor. Had no idea that when I was at a young age, that I would be able to go from Caruthersville around this world and back again. I've had 5 tours of the Philippine Islands preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. I've been to Belize, Central America twice doing the same thing. Had the opportunity to go and be up in Windsor, Canada because of a revival that I had in Detroit, Michigan. And so I accredit a lot of my success to growing up in the Washington School that exposed us to more than just, in our old words, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But I learned how to be a good citizen. I learned the same thing there that I was learned at home, how to respect my elders, how to, you say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, to whoever was an adult. And those were the values that I found out later. I needed those values in myself because I had no idea I was going to one day be a pastor that would be teaching some of the same things. But it always blessed me. And the thing that really moved me more than anything else growing up here in Caruthersville, I got to a point to where I had a deep hunger for spiritual truth that overrode traditional religion. I've got a few minutes. So being a person that's in the ministry, I felt like I needed something more than just a traditional religion. I wanted a real relationship with God, and I received that. So I appreciate this time. I don't know how much more I got, but growing up in Caruthersville has been rewarding because I've been able to go around the world right here from home and come back. And I'm still here serving in the community as a mentor, as a pastor, as a part-time teacher in the school system, and I'm thankful. Thank you.
Growing up in the Bootheel. Okay, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to try to wrap it up in a few minutes. Racism was a lot going on here, but I did enjoy growing up at Washington High School, or middle school, because I didn't go to high school there. My mother was a teacher. My father graduated from Washington High School. My mother graduated from Central, which was in Hayti. My grandfather owned a small residential store. We were taught to do everything we could do because the teachers that we grew up with as children taught us how to become somebody special. They loved us, they cultivated us, and I enjoyed them. And when they left, I was devastated by it because when I went to the white school, the teachers didn't care about us. You know, they didn't care whether we passed or went on to the next grade or even understood what they were teaching. A lot of times I would have to go to Terrence the next day or that evening and ask him, what were they talking about? Because I had no idea, because I was the youngest in my class, which that didn't mean anything to them either. But nevertheless, I grew up with diversity by being with white kids and also being with black children as well. When I went to the white school and intermingled with them, the next year, after my freshman year, integration came where the blacks had to come to the white school. And so I had white friends by that time. So the black children looked at me as though I was a Tom because I had white friends. So they didn't want to talk to me. So I had made enemies with them as being the only black in my class for the first year. So it was kind of difficult, but my mother taught me to get in everything I could get into that they would allow me to get into at the white school. So when I did that, it taught me more diversity and more what I wanted out of life, more than what Caruthersville could actually offer me, I felt, because they were doing exciting things. And here in Caruthersville, we were limited to the things that we were able to do here. And therefore, I wanted to get out. So my goal was to hurry up and graduate and get out of Caruthersville so I could expand my life and have a fuller life. But it all started with being here in Caruthersville with my grandparents who had 40 acres, and not the mules, but they did have the 40 acres. I didn't understand a lot of things that were going on in Caruthersville because my parents were well-to-do. My father worked for Arkansas, Missouri Power Company. My mother was a school teacher. So they had professions. I didn't understand a lot of my friends whose parents were not professional workers. They were laborers. They were lawn workers. They were maids. They did slavery things, and I didn't understand that. I didn't know because my father worked for Arkansas, Missouri Power Company. So he kept us away from a lot of the prejudice and the segregation that was going on. So a lot of places we couldn't go. We never went to the movie theater because of the segregation. And the black theaters that they had here, the one that they had here, we weren't allowed to go there because they did too many corrupted things inside of the theater that my father didn't want us to be exposed to. So everywhere they had the black or colored signs on the doorway for black people to enter into. I never understood what that meant. I said, there's a sign that says colored. What is that? But my parents was very protective of us, so a lot of things I didn't understand. I didn't understand that the children at school were getting out early so they could cultivate the land and work it so they could make money. And they'd go back to school, and get the rest of their education. When harvest time came, they would have to take off from school again and go back to work. I didn't have to do that. I chose to go to work because that wasn't something that changed my life, because we had an air conditioner, we had an inside bathroom, we had a colored TV, we had a telephone. But there was things we had a lot of kids didn't have, which I didn't know because we weren't allowed to go in everybody's houses, just stand outside and talk to them. So, but I thank God for his grace and his mercy that we were able to get through it all in spite of what man had tried to do to destroy us, and to see that we were able to survive and overcome as we are overcoming all the things that we go through right now in life. Amen?
Hello, my name is Kenneth Simmons. Growing up in the Bootheel, one of the things I realized when I was coming up, I didn't realize it until I got older, but we did have people in Caruthersville that were doing things. I remember we had our own black police officer, Mr. Lies. I remember we had grocery stores, black grocery stores. We had Young Groceries, Ross, Cliff Jackson. We had our own barbers, Mr. Pete, my Uncle Buddy. So we had people that were doing things, and our teachers, I credit them a lot because they really cared and they gave us more than they had to give. I'm saying that they went in deep into their pockets to make sure that we were successful. I remember going to school and we would look at our school books and we would see names in our books, and we didn't recognize those names. So we were getting second and third level school books. But the teachers loved us and they cared so much that they gave us everything that we needed to succeed. I remember leaving Washington High School and being in that first group to go over to Caruthersville High. Diversity, yes, but sports helped. Because by me being an athlete and everything, we were more acceptable. And the thing that I looked at is when I transitioned from Caruthersville High School into the real world, I wanted to get my education, and I didn't have no avenue to do that. So what I did, I joined the Air Force. And in joining the Air Force, I went to school on what they call tuition assistance. Okay, so while I was in the Air Force, I was going to college. Once I got out of the Air Force, then I sit back and I had the GI Bill. I used the GI Bill to go to school. I started out in commercial art. From there, I went to drafting, and then I got more involved in computers. So I ended up getting an associate's degree in engineering technology with emphasis on computer specialists. After that, I started pursuing computer science with emphasis on mathematics. After that, I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in management of information systems. And you're wondering probably, why did I go that avenue? And the reason why I went to that avenue, because as black people back then, whatever you didn't have is what they wanted. So I wanted to make sure that I had all of that. So the only thing you could tell me is, Ken, I don't want you, okay? And part of the driving force, when I was graduated from high school right here in Caruthersville, I was going up to the post office to fill out an application to be a delivery guy. And the lady told me you needed a bachelor's degree to do that. Well, after I got through with my military time, I did do altogether 39 years with DOD. I found out that was a lower level. You didn't need a degree to get that job, but that was the way that they used racism to control things. They tried to control us economically. But like I said, I'm so proud of being from Caruthersville because we had good role models when I was coming up. And I can sit there and talk about some of the men. I know we had Boy Scouts where they would take us out and they would expose us to things. You know, and our school teachers, I don't know if a lot of y'all remember this, but they used to visit my home midterm to let my parents know how I was doing in school. And, you know, and that community connection was there. And so, like I said, coming from Caruthersville enabled me to have the strength, the wisdom to go out and succeed in this world today. So that's what I had to say about growing up in Caruthersville, and do really appreciate this opportunity, and I want to thank you all.
Growing up in Caruthersville, that's saying it takes a village to raise an individual. As far as I'm concerned, we had a village. There was nothing that you could do in our circle of the community that you're going to get away with something and your parents weren't going to hear about it. So I'm a person growing up, I didn't take chances. I had a brother, Butch we call him, his name was Elmore. Butch would take chances. I wasn't. So sometimes I learned from the things he did not to do because the circumstances after doing that is something I didn't want to deal with me. But anyway, so growing up in Caruthersville, and so my sister, Janet, we had some real good friends, the Carrs, Jackie and Jackman Carr, and they live about one street over, as you come down 84 into Caruthersville, over there by the Army Hall. We would walk from 1510 West to the Army Hall. Didn't think anything of it. Didn't think anything, just started out walking. And we were young people, and so we were comfortable in going through the two communities, black and white, to walk there. Growing up in Caruthersville, I have come to know some individuals, most certainly I consider to be lifelong friends. And Dr. Pressberry, who will be coming up shortly, he was one in which I became friends with back then. We went to school together at Lincoln. I was in his wedding, he was at my wedding, and I have been told you're blessed if you have one good friend. Actually, I had two. The other individual is no longer with us, but I still got Richard. I call him Press. Growing up in Caruthersville, so that kind of friendship has lasted 70 plus years. And he and I, we live in the same community, but sometimes if it's about, let's just say 3 weeks, a month, I'm gonna just go even say 2 months before we actually sit down and have a conversation. When we sit down, it's just like we just got through talking yesterday. We just pick up and just start talking. And I just found that very interesting to have that type of relationship with an individual that no matter how much time between the last time I spoke with him or saw him, we just start talking. I love it. And so growing up in Caruthersville, because we were a small community, is where we grew up, and you knew everybody, pretty much knew everybody. And so growing up in Caruthersville, if you, as I alluded to a minute ago, if you do something that the other people, adults in the community would think that your parents wouldn't like, you may get a whipping from them, and then when you get home, you get that second whipping. You know, so the thing is, think about what you do before you do it. And so that was my mantra, if you will. Okay, let me think about this. Okay, I better not do this. And so that was, oh yeah, and the teachers. As I reflect back on the educational system we had, actually compared to some of the things I hear now, it was excellent. The teachers cared about the students. I don't care if you didn't want to learn something, you're gonna learn something, if nothing to sit there and write your name. But you're gonna learn something. There's no one else saying go sit in the corner, don't disturb the rest of the classroom. You're gonna learn something. And I think there was Mr. Simmons who said that parents would make visitations to your home. So it wasn't gonna be like your parents were gonna know, what went on. So there was connection with parents to students. And that was very helpful for the young people coming up knowing that you weren't gonna get away with anything at school that your parents didn't know. And so that's a glimpse of my experience in growing up in Caruthersville.
Good afternoon. God bless you. My name is Ken Tipler. My story, I want to give you a little bad, I want to give you a little good, and then I want to tell you a little bit about the outcome. The bad part of growing up in Caruthersville was the poverty, you know. I know what it's like not to have anything in the refrigerator. You can't go and ask for something else. I know what it's like to not to have to go outside to a bathroom. I know what it's like to not have electricity, to have oil lamps, if you can remember that. I know what it's like to have to call the iceman that was coming down the street, put ice in the top of this big box, and it would keep the food cold. So I learned a lot of the not so nice things in my early life in Caruthersville. I was the first baby of Betty and Wayne Tipler. Betty was 14, Wayne was 17. And in Missouri, that's probably a prescription for failure, you know. So I grew up with a very young mother and a wild father. And but one thing that really happened for me, and I think sometimes, well, I know this for a fact, God puts people in your path to straighten out some of those crooked edges that you might have. And for me, it was, first of all, Mr. Waller. Mr. Waller was a history teacher. And Mr. Waller was very stern, and he wasn't a very funny guy, but he was always serious about everything. And Mr. Waller would tell me, you know, all the time, you know, Ken, if you want to make it in this world, you got to be twice as good as that little white boy. You got to hit these books hard. He says, I know you have the ability. I don't know why you're doing this. And it was because I was having fun being bad. But Mr. Waller saw that, and he wanted to change. He wanted to change. He saw potential in me. The good about Caruthersville, I have to say, was number one, the church. At church is where we learned that we were as good as that little white boy across town. We learned about how the sacrifices of Christ and the sacrifices that we were going through and how they weren't permanent. They were just temporary on this side. So the church was probably the most influential piece of my life growing up. Secondly was the school. And you've heard other folks say that the teachers really cared. They did. They really cared. If you did bad, then it was kind of a reflection on them, and they wanted to see you do good. They always did. And when they saw potential in you, they took the extra step to try to develop that potential. Now, and finally, let me sum up about where this has all taken me. From not living an early life of deprivation, and a later life of learning what it was to earn a living and how to live in this society, what I've learned is that no matter what, black or white, we're all the same. Black or white, that we have the same creator, and God loves us all. And that taught me in my career as a firefighter and later as a fire marshal for the city of Seattle, where I didn't really have a like, to put it nicely, for white people. And most of my clients were white. And so I never really trusted them. I always felt like you had to be, my grandmother used to say, feed them with a long handled spoon. And so, but that was my career for the last 10 years of my working career. That was who I dealt with. And I learned from my early childhood that I could be as good at whatever they were doing, and I could do that job. And when I got some of the accolades, it was really kind of a bringing everything full circle. I was told that I could do these things. I tried to do these things, and I accomplished these things. And that's what growing up in Caruthersville was to me.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to come back to Caruthersville, especially during the reunion. I was instrumental in getting the Washington School Reunion organization off the ground, and it's important for us to recognize the experience that we had growing up. And recognize those teachers. And many of the previous speakers have already talked about the importance of those teachers and giving us a vision. Without a vision, the people perish. And they gave us a vision to move forward and do some things that many of us were not aware that we could do. Reminds me of a story. And it's my experience when I was in the 7th grade. I was in my 7th grade English class. Miss Eileen Gibson Barnes, who was the teacher, and she was strict. And she had a reputation of having eyes in the back of her head. And she was turned to the other side of the room, and I was talking, Charles, I was talking to Brenda Betts. And she saw me, and she yelled, "Pressbury, you see me after class." I said, "Oh, Lord, my first day in the 7th grade, I'm already in trouble with Miss Barnes." Everybody left. I went up to her desk, and she said, "Pressbury, I've heard about you. You have a lot of potential. You can do anything that you want to do." Up until that time, I was pretty much a C student. I was a C student because in elementary school, most of my teachers, you have them all day. And if you made a C in one class, a lot of times they would just give you a C. And I wasn't the kind of student that asserted myself. And so I was a C student. I got by, stayed out of trouble, kept my head down. But after Miss Barnes' discussion, my grades went up. I graduated with honors. But she was the one that got me on the right track. She was the one that gave me the vision. Now, that's just one story. There were several teachers, and most of you know the ones in your life who had that impact. But once they turn you on to education, then you can move forward. Another thing that I'm proud of, and my wife and I started, Iva and I started Hope for Caribbean Kids Incorporated, working with children in Haiti. And that's something we've been doing for about 26 years. And I'll let her talk about that.
Well, God is so good. He's so faithful. I can talk about Hope for Caribbean Kids Inc., and I will talk about that. But the joy of my life is meeting my husband. And a lot of people say that they were the ones to get us together, but actually the truth is, Ron Carter introduced Richard to me. And I lived in Haiti. I was really afraid of actually dating a guy from Caruthersville because I had heard some things. So I did my interview and it worked. God has a plan for every life. And that's what I tell young people or anyone that ask me, because he says that I have a plan for your life, a plan to prosper you, a plan to help you, a plan to give you hope in a future. And so that's what I tell. My mother, Jetty Taylor, was the inspiration for my life. She was always one who wanted to give and help. She helped children. If there was a fire, she would come home and gather up clothes. She worked at Head Start with young people. She helped with when there was surplus products, she helped in the community. So when Richard and I went to college together at Lincoln University, we were married in August of 1970, but in 1971, we were still students at Lincoln University, but I had this image at the foot of my bed one night with a bright light that shined there, and the silhouette of a person said, "You ought to be a missionary." That scared me so bad. I didn't know what that was. But anyway, God had a plan to use all of the things that we learned, and I've been hearing stories. We grew up in the civil rights movement, so we have similar stories. But all of the good things and the bad things were things that God had planned and purposed for our lives. So we finished college, we went off to St. Louis to live, and finally, in 1994, I accepted this call, and we started praying, "Lord, what do you want us to go? What do you want us to do?" And I had another dream. I had a dream. In that dream, I saw dark-skinned people sitting on a low structure with their legs hanging over the side. And it was rural, and it was so different. And in the sky was written Hayti, Haiti. So we knew we were going to be going and serving in Haiti. And as Richard already said, we've been serving there for 26 years. But when we served 10 years at a place called New Missions. And then that's where we were actually trained to do missions. It was an excellent program. And then the earthquake separated us from there. And so in 2012, we finally made it to Mont Blanc, where we serve now in the Southern Mountains. And that very first day that we were there, the end of the first week, went out, and there on the kids' playground was a low structure with dark-skinned people sitting on with their legs hanging over the side, and we were in Haiti. So we knew that's where we needed to serve. So that's where we've been serving all these years. But the thing that, from my youth and my mother's instructions, these are some of the things that have caused us to now be serving 370 kids there. We built a school there, and 25 children in Port-au-Prince in an orphanage. So
all of the things that we experienced growing up, and Ken, they said we could have 10 minutes, so 9:30, okay. All the things that we have experienced played a part. When we got to Haiti, we thought we were poor here. It's a whole different level there. And then all of the things that they're going through now, you can't imagine. This is the worst it's ever been for Haiti. And it's been bad for Haiti for a long time. But we're still able to serve the kids, even though it's not safe for us to go anymore. We haven't been there since 2019, but we're working with 3 pastors, a nurse, and another brother who helps us get the food, get the funds, get the equipment that the kids need. And so we're continuing to help them. One thing, several things I would have to say to young people is read extensively. Make sure that you have a vision for what you want to do, what you want to be. Do not be a victim. We had experiences, negative things happening to us here, but don't let that determine who you are or who you wind up being. Your success is based on what you do. Your success is based on your moving forward as opposed to allowing negative experiences to derail your plans. We're at a at a pivotal time right now, especially in Caruthersville. And we need to do the things that we need to do as a people to continue moving forward.
Say something.
Our trials in life come to make us strong. That's what the scripture tells us. Our trials come to make us strong. So we need to keep our focus on God. So many a times we hold on to problems that we've experienced with other people, and we point fingers at what has happened and focus on and just feel bad about experiences that we've had. But, you know, if any movie that you've gone to, the superhero has gone through some difficult times. So we grow by the difficulties in our lives, and God is faithful.
Thank you for joining us for this wonderful, powerful day of storytelling. I hope these stories have reminded you, as they have reminded me, that no matter where life takes us, the lessons we carry from home can help shape the best of who we are. Thank you so much. And until next time, keep telling your story and keep moving forward and keep remembering the power of home.